Baseball season starts today because yesterday was the Super Bowl. We're recording this episode of Almost Cooperstown from sunny California. We take a little time out here. It's 0 degrees back east. It's been a tough month. We're here to bring you sunshine and baseball. It's This Week in Baseball. We have here in California something called the California Winter League. We came upon that, your mom and I, when we were at a street fair last week.
Yeah, I'm not going to get a chance to go, unfortunately.
No, but so these two young guys, we're talking to them, and I say, "Oh, we have a podcast," and oh, great. So they rigged the wheel so that we would get tickets for their. So you got to come to the park.
You really got the primo invite then.
Well, not only is the primo invite, this weekend coming up are the playoffs, and I saw it's 4 teams, and it is basically ex-college players and amateurs that are trying to get back, to
People
get
trying to
noticed in baseball. Yeah.
basically.
They're young players, though. That's the point. And the Padres, the Dodgers, the Giants, and the Athletics are the teams that are represented, and I guess they have
Those guys they're
playoff
interested in, right? And they're going to.
California Winter League. Who knew?
I mean, it's nice to see that something we talk about is the death of amateur baseball in a sense, and how it's so much less than what it used to be, and how even the minor league programs, but you still have leagues like this, and there's a lot more of them out there than I think people really realize.
I'm not tempted to bring my glove down there just in case. They might be sure.
I think they said they were looking for young players.
That's right. Anyway, in real baseball, because as we record this, we have not yet watched the Super Bowl, so we're going to watch that later on. So we're going to look completely at baseball, and we've already seen pitchers and a video of pitchers. Been watching lots of Met pitchers thrown in spring training.
Everybody looks like they're in the best shape of their life.
Yeah, like they've been working all winter. So the official reporting dates are this week. We've got about a little over 50 days till opening day, and after that, before that, we're going to have the World Baseball Classic. So we've got a lot to look forward to, as you said in our last podcast. And there was some interesting news.
Obviously, the biggest news was, I think, both really the two biggest pieces of news were both Tiger related in a sense. In that, first off, they went out and they signed Framber Valdez to an enormous contract, making him the highest AAV pitcher, 3-year, $115 million deal, which is more than Blake Snell is getting right now. But then interesting also, the Tigers finished their arbitration case with Tarik Skubal, and he's going to get about $13 million more than whatever they were paying him. So they're putting a lot of money into their pitching staff this year.
And there was some talk that Skubal's the $32 million that he's getting. Okay, now we know what he costs. So if we trade him, which I don't think they're going to do. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. You at least know what the cost is of the player. So they basically signed Framber first, and I thought, ooh, does that mean they're going to let the guy go? Because they kind of have a backstop here now. So
I think if you're the Tigers, I can't say that they're for sure not going to trade him, because if the Tigers get off to a terrible start this year and they're not in the AL Central somehow, they're 30 and 50, trending towards the trading deadline. I could see them moving Skubal in that case.
Everything that I see says the Tigers have to go for it now in a weak AL Central. It's weak.
Right.
And this is why they should not.
That's why I'm saying they're going to go for him. But the only reason they do trade him is, for some reason, they in the weak Central are part of that, and they have a bad year, which, to be fair, I don't think is going to happen. The team is just kind of too good for me to really. But if the wheels fall off the bus, then I could see that's really the only way I see Skubal moving this year. And then next off season, it'll be really interesting to see whether or not Tarik Skubal gets signed or we have a lockout.
Well, then that's true, and I don't know that that could be why they don't do anything at this point, because not knowing is going to happen next season. Now, obviously, if you're locking the players out, you're not paying him, so he could be on your team, and you're not.
Right, exactly. The Tigers are almost incentivized to keep him in that situation.
So Skubal's a couple of interesting things about, I thought, the arbitration. That raise is $22 million from his $10 million salary this year.
Right.
It's the biggest raise, in an arbitration, settlement that's ever happened before. And what I didn't know about arbitration is, so the very narrow definition is the 4th through 6 years of a player's career, unless they set an extension. The teams and players have to agree on 1 year's salaries. And so this is the stage that you get. And most of the time these things are settled. But as we said in our last podcast, when, Skubal submitted $32 million and the Tigers, for some reason or other, submitted $19, they had to know they were going to lose. why would you want to piss off your player? But I don't think that's. I'm wrong.
I don't think
it's not about that.
Right, it's not about that. I don't think Skubal looked at their offer about like them lowballing him because it's not about because you can't really lowball him because either he gets his offer or not. And I almost think in a way, if you're the Tigers, you're better off putting in an offer that he can't possibly get. Because what's worse is if you put an offer for like 23 million and the judge gives it to you. And now all of a sudden Skubal's really mad because now he feels like he got gypped. And he's suddenly like, wait a second, I'm like $10 million underpaid. Now his desire to be traded skyrockets because he feels like he's being underpaid. At least now he's like, okay, you know what? I'm getting what I deserve. I can't be mad at them. They didn't stand in the way of that.
He's sort of a unicorn. We use the term obviously with Shohei Ohtani playing, but because he's young enough and is a free agent at this point in his career when he's at his very best.
Right. Not a lot of guys become a free agent. Not a lot of guys have the body of work that he has at this age where you can say, hey, whoever is signing him is signing a year in, year out Cy Young contender. And that's an unusual thing, which is why I think that he is going to be a big, he's going to be the dominant story pretty much the entire year.
And I think that if you're going to give any pitcher 7 years, this is the pitcher I would give 7 years, knowing full well, and he gave Max Fried got, 8 for the Yankees, knowing full well that probably he's not going to pitch one of those years.
Right. You have to accept that you have to think about
eventually get injured.
Right, it's coming, and those weren't the only moves. We did see a few other moves as well. So, like we saw Brendan Donovan get traded. I think that's a bigger deal than that's a good player going to the Mariners who needed help offensively.
Well, they flipped Polanco to the Mets, and so then they get a guy, who is, a good fielder, and I really like that player a lot. And so certainly the Cardinals are capitulating here in February.
The Cardinals have finally done what we all thought they needed to do, which is actually commit to doing a rebuild. And probably no team benefits more from this than the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah.
Because the Pittsburgh Pirates
they won't finish last.
Right. They won't finish last. And they're a team that kind of needs to have a year where they're at least in the wild card discussion going into August, September. They don't have to make it, but I feel like if you have another year where you're out of it by June, July as the Pirates, I don't know. There's something stinking there.
And the Pirates, they did bring in a few players, and we've talked about that already.
Right.
I like the vibe I'm getting from the Pirates better than in the best because they spent some money and they brought in a couple of players. And I think they don't seem like the same old Pirates to me right now.
Right. I think the Reds, because they're going to have a tough division because the Reds also didn't stand pat.
Right.
While the Cardinals were moving off of players in the NL Central, the Reds are adding them as they went out and were
the other 4 teams are tough.
Eugenio Suarez, and so the top 3 teams in that division between the Cubs, the Brewers, and the Reds are all good. So the path is not easy for what we like to think of as an upstart Pirate team.
I read a story on the center fielder, O'Neill Cruz, and how, his defensive abilities in center field, he's got the arm, we all know that, but that he might be better served actually being a right fielder ultimately for the Pirates. The problem is they don't have a center fielder, and they don't really want to play Brian Reynolds there because they've tried that before.
It didn't work.
Didn't go so well. So I think for a dynamic player like that, it worked for Tatis Jr. We talked about him.
Well, but that's a
short.
But that's short to right field.
But he started from short to outfield to right field. That's what happened to Tatis Jr. He was the same thing. So I think there's a path there, and Cruz has got so much talent. They have to find a way, and I guess he's working, hard to get better at reading the balls with Kevin Kiermaier.
There are other things that worry you about O'Neill Cruz as a prospect and a long-term player, because as hard as he hits the ball on the ground a concerning amount, and it doesn't really matter how hard you hit the ball if you hit the ball into the ground, because 100-mile-an-hour ground balls are way easier to field than 100-mile-an-hour line drives and fly balls. And so when you have a ground ball rate as stark as his, he needs to have a sort of James Wood improvement, where James Wood last year specifically really cut his ground ball rate. He still hit a lot, but it was down from what he had been doing previously, because a guy like him who has prodigious power is always going to be hampered if you hit the ball on the ground a lot.
It was the season before that O'Neill Cruz had the 2 hardest hit balls in baseball or something like that for exit velocity.
Right, he hits the ball. His exit velocity is crazy, but because he hits the ball on the ground so much, 114-mile-an-hour ball on the ground is either an out or a single most of the time.
Yeah. These guys, they feel those things.
Right, they feel it, and even if
they have lots of time to throw it to first.
And even if they don't, it's just a single most of the time because you have to hit it up the lines for it to be any kind of down one of the lines for it to be any kind of extra base hit. So I think that that's a concerning thing for O'Neal Cruz. Is what is he? He's such an interesting potential player, but at a certain point, I need his potential to start being an actual good player.
Being 6'7", just he's hard not to notice on the field because he's really tall.
You want him to be good, but I feel like him like Ellie De La Cruz at least is a little bit better about getting on base. He plays a better defensive shortstop.
He does.
Not by a ton, but he's
still playing shortstop.
He's still playing shortstop, and he steals way more bases than O'Neal Cruz.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between those two players. And you might not think that's a lot, but in terms of being an everyday contributing ball player, it is.
I don't know why I'm on Pirate Talk right now, but I saw something else that the Pirates hit 31 fewer home runs than any team in the major leagues last year. We just inherently as baseball fans know, they don't really have a power hitter on the team. You know that.
Right. And I got to think, just keeping it NL Central, the team that's going to probably be that this year is the Cardinals, because who was left on that team to hit home runs?
Yeah. Even Nolan Arenado, who they traded, wasn't hitting a lot of home runs when he was there.
Contreras is gone now. Brendan Donovan's gone now. I mean, what are you counting on Jordan Walker hitting 30 bombs? They might not have a guy hit 20 next year.
So I felt that they could have signed,
Suarez.
Eugenio Suarez.
But if I'm the Cardinals, and they're clearly capitulating this year, and they're clearly starting to go, and they're going to be in the first revenue sharing for the first time in 25 years, it seems like they're expecting to have not a great year after having a very low attendance year last year. And for the greatest fans,
they're the best fans in baseball.
It cannot be fun to all of a sudden be like, what is the direction for this team's future, and what is ownership's plan? Because that's something we've had a complaint about a lot of teams. Say what you want about the Mets and how it didn't work last year. It's clear at least ownership has a plan for how they're going to win. The Dodgers
has lots of money too.
Right, ownership, but the teams that are spending money and trying to win are putting in moves in. Like the Brewers are a team that's trying to win even though they don't have a lot of money. And so when you look at the teams that don't have a lot of money and then don't make any moves to get better, it's much more frustrating.
And you always go back. I think it's sort of like the fault back now is that, just look at the Angels. You can spend a lot of money and spend it unwisely, like Artie Moreno. And so that's your fail safe. You think, that's why you shouldn't necessarily spend money, because you can spend a lot of money and have it not work out.
One team is going to win every year. The issue is not necessarily spending the money, but how the Angels spent their money, because they spent a lot of money, but the issue wasn't spending a lot of money. It's that they spent their money in very bizarre and
they always seem to
ways.
And then not that Mike Trout is a bad guy to spend money on, but the Rendon thing was just an abject disaster.
And they their pitching development has been awful. Their ability to go out and sign free agent pitchers, they chase veteran free agent pitchers every single for a long time.
That is their MO,
and it never worked. So how much can I really? I'm not going to criticize that on money. I'm criticizing that on how you use it.
Yes. Well, we didn't come here to talk about the Angels, but I did want to talk about another Tiger as it links to the WBC, and that's Javier Baez.
We had a lot of WBC disqualifications in a sense this week, with Baez as potentially being the most amusing.
Yes, for marijuana, which I guess is not allowed in the WBC. But does that mean it's allowed in Major League Baseball? Or is it? I don't know.
They probably just don't test for it in Major League Baseball. Yeah, and also, I'm pretty sure WBC was just thinking, that weed might help Javi Baez with play discipline. Unless he's going to be too stoned to swing at the patent sometimes.
So he won't be getting hurt. And Puerto Rico's got a problem because they've had some insurance problems with some of the players.
Yeah, Lindor is going to be sitting out. Carlos Correa is going to be sitting out. And I do understand fans' complaints in saying, hey, wait a second. You put all the tickets on sale for all these games and sold me these tickets telling me, oh, yeah, these guys are going to be on the roster. I bought it because Francisco Lindor is my favorite player. I want to come see him play. Oh, wait, insurance is going to not let him play anymore. I don't get a refund my ticket.
No, you're going to the game, and you're not going and you're not going to see the team you thought you were going to see.
Right, and so I do understand the frustration. As a Met fan, I am very sad that Francisco Lindor will not be playing.
Why are you smiling so much?
But I'm very happy because he is getting to be towards an older player. He's not young anymore. Certainly, he had a year injury where he was unusually banged up last year, and as a guy that tends to play most games throughout a season, him not playing in the WBC is not the worst thing in the world, and it gives the U.S. a better chance to win.
Doesn't break my heart. And the Mets, I think when Lindor was part of it, had the most guys in the WBC, 17 guys on the Mets in the WBC. So, that's a lot of guys. Somebody's going to get hurt out of one of those guys.
But you know what? That's a mark of an organization I think players will like that. Players do, because the players really, because as much as we talk about the fans, the players more than anybody else are the ones that really care about the WBC. And if your organization is known as one that, hey, if you go there, they'll let you play for your team, that's going to matter for like Japanese players coming over. You're going to want to go back and play for Team Japan. And if you think there's teams out there that are more likely to not let you play, you might not be willing to go and play for them.
And the same thing has sort of happened with the Olympics, because you've got guys saying, I want to play in the Olympics, trying to work something. I think Skubal worked out playing in the Olympic team with Mark DeRosa in 2028 in Los Angeles. So, they do love playing for their country. And it's going to be unfortunate because Puerto Rico, if everybody was playing, that's a loaded team.
That's a loaded team. And I mean, another guy that will definitely not be playing in the WBC or the major leagues anytime soon will be Emmanuel Clase, as it got worse somehow. You know, we thought it was bad, but we didn't realize it was 48 different games where he is suspected of throwing a pitch that was influenced by bettors.
And here's the thing. Okay, so the guy was making $10 million.
Right.
Like that. And so my question to you was 10 million. And you say, well, no, it's not about like how much is enough? And you got 10 million bucks. You're going to bet like little money on baseball games, or even if it's big money. It's such a huge risk to take. And you're saying, no, he was doing it, tipping off people.
A lot of the times it's not about your money. It's about all of a sudden, because you're Emmanuel Clase. I don't know where he's from. I don't know what country he's from or where he comes from. But let's say he probably does not come from a place, it's not like he's one of these rich prospects from America, most likely. He probably came from, and all of a sudden you have a way to get all of these people from your home paid in a way they could never get paid. Because and
just give them the money.
You don't have to do that. You have to throw one pitch, and all of a sudden, all of these people make, and especially $500 to them is so much different than $500 to you. And so that's how you can get influence to do it. And it's so easy to sell yourself on who's going to know. I think about it. In his mind, he did it for 48 games before somebody noticed.
Yeah, well, like you said, he's never going to play in the major leagues again. Like, this has gone from bad to worse. And I want to hear him at some point explain, here's what I was thinking.
I think
don't have that. I don't know what it's going to be.
Ohtani last offseason. You've had Emmanuel Clase now. You've had Terry Rozier. You had Chauncey Billups' situation in the NBA is different, but Terry Rozier the same way. You've now had multiple players in different leagues getting caught influencing the outcomes of games because of betting. And it is only a matter of time before there is a scandal in one of the major sports that is too big to ignore, and they're going to have to put the cat back in the bag.
Yeah.
Because all it's going to take is somebody is going to get busted for potentially influencing the outcome of a playoff game or a championship. There's going to be somebody found on the take for one of these eventually.
I don't see any way that gambling ever is not part of it now that it's there.
They're going to get that out. But I'm sure that all of a sudden, I bet the sponsorships will drop off. Suddenly, you're not going to have, ESPN Sunday Night Baseball brought to you by FanDuel.
I hope that doesn't happen. I really don't. So, I guess keeping in sad news a little bit, because we had a couple of players, former major leaguers, pass away last week. On the one side, Bobby Shantz, who pitched in the mid-40s for the Yankees, and I think it was the Red Sox. It might have been 100 years old. And he was just interviewed by, I think, Tyler Kepner last year. And very, very, very interesting thing to hear him talk about. He's a little guy, and he died at 100. And unfortunately, a 34-year-old man, Terrence Gore, who most recently, I think everybody's remember playing him for the Royals.
I remember him playing for the Mets even as a speed guy who would come in and steal bases late in games. Unfortunately, passed away during complications during a routine surgery.
I mean, that doesn't sound good. And I saw something about Terrence Gore. He had 16 major league hits in his career, and he had more stolen bases than he had, hits in his
I
career.
would believe that.
So it's an unfortunate thing, very sad and shocking when a young guy like that goes. I saw, and I wanted to ask you about this because NBC is going to be covering Major League Baseball in place, and everybody who was doing ESPN Sunday Night Baseball was like, wow, NBC has everything. They're basically going to own Sunday for every sport. They got the NBA.
They have football.
Now
they have baseball.
They've got baseball. So basically all year long, you've got
NBC. They've announced their new, coverage lineup, and they've got 3 former leaguers coming in to be their analyst crew, and Joey Votto, Kershaw, and Rizzo. And I know between Votto and Rizzo, that's two very personable and likable guys. And Kershaw's a very personable
They're
guy.
all left-handed. What is that?
Kind of weird. Three, it's going to be interesting who they decide to put sort of as the leader of that group, because I can see immediately NBC has a chance to replicate the success of Inside the NBA with, you had Shaq and you had Ernie, and that has been such a big Shaq, Ernie, and Charles has been such a prominent show in the NBA. I would not be surprised if they're hoping they couldn't recreate a little bit of that magic.
That's interesting because, like, who's your booth? I know Bob Costas is going to do some stuff.
Right. I don't know who's going to be.
He's doing pre-game.
These guys aren't going to be the booth, but they're still going to be there every week talking about baseball. And if they can make that into a watchable, important show, I think that would be really good, because baseball fans don't have that as sort of a sit-down appointment viewing each week of this is who talks about the week in baseball. And even if it's only 30 minutes or an hour, if they can come up with some funny bits and some stuff to talk about, people will definitely tune in.
Yes, yeah. And then, I wanted to ask you about Bob Costas, because I'm trying to, I met Bob Costas a few times when I was working in New York in the early. We used to come over and listen to the music that the guy I was working for had put together. Very nice guy. He's been, obviously, he's a Hall of Famer and all. But I think, as a guy who's in his early 70s, how do you think about the relevance of a guy who you remember seeing him in Ken Burns' baseball?
Let's put it this way. I remember his performance last year during the playoffs, and that was rough. I mean, I remember there'd be games, entire portions of games where it felt like he was having.
Yeah, I don't know that he's doing play-by-play. I think he's doing studio work.
Right. In that case, I'm much more okay with it, because he clearly loves baseball, and I think his style will actually fit better for studio work, because he can lend a gravitas, and I think he's going to be.
That's a good point.
For talking about, because he really loves talking about the imagery and wistfully about baseball, and I think he will be very good in that respect.
So the last thing I wanted to talk about, and you mentioned Joey Votto, and we kind of got off on a conversation this week. We'll talk about Votto for the Hall of Fame, and then Goldschmidt. We mentioned him in this podcast. He signs with the Yankees, and say, I always look at Goldschmidt, and I'm coming out with a post that basically all the Hall of Famers you're going to see playing this season, and Goldschmidt is right there on my list.
He was right there, but when you look at the stats that Paul Goldschmidt has, and you compare him to Joey Votto and Freddie Freeman, either one of them is a Hall of Famer. Either all of them are Hall of Famers, or none of them are Hall of Famers, because they're all virtually the exact same.
So you can go into StatHead and do the versus finder and get the three guys next to okay. So Freddie Freeman's career B WAR is 64.2. He's played 2,179 games. Joey Votto is 63.6, a little less. He played in 2,056 games, so a few fewer games. Goldschmidt, 2,074 games, so about the same, 63.8. I mean, that's unbelievable. Right. They're not separated by more than half a point.
And it's basically this across all those statistics. If we read them out,
they all have 300 home runs.
They're all hitting they all have basically a 140 OPS. They all have batting average that's within 10 or 12 points of.
Does Freddie Freeman have a gold glove in his?
Freeman has one.
Votto has
zero.
Votto has zero.
Goldschmidt has four. That's the biggest outlier. Goldschmidt has 4 Gold Gloves in comparison to everybody else who just does not have that. Now, Freddie Freeman.
Votto has one.
Has one, right?
He and Freeman each have one.
And Goldschmidt also has 5 Silver Sluggers.
Yeah, I guess I'm surprised that Votto. I guess Goldschmidt was doing it when Votto wasn't, so that's the unfortunate thing. You play at the same time.
They've each made a ton of All-Star games. Freddie's just the winningest player of the 3, because he's got 3 World Series. None of them even have one. Votto barely stepped the playoff.
Well, not only is Freddie the winningest player of the 3, he did big things in the World Series, and that counts in our book, right?
And I think most people, if you really, if you talk to fans of all 3, I think you would probably get the biggest pushback from Reds fans about who's better between Votto and Freeman. But I think most people would acknowledge overall, especially because Freddie has put up these numbers, and he's still likely to play at least 1 or 2 more seasons, whereas I can only see Goldschmidt being a limited player this season. I can't imagine he's playing less. Freeman might have 2 or 3 seasons putting up stats left, and in that case, when he's done, he will have put himself in a tier above the 2 of them that's more clearly delineated.
And because Goldschmidt and Votto had, I don't know, I guess Goldschmidt probably had more postseason experience, but not success, and Votto didn't get there.
maybe more than one.
One time, I think, maybe
Twice.
2015 or something like
made
that.
it at least twice.
So, it's hard to be a stud in the playoffs. So
When you
like
don't
Freddie
get
Freeman, if you're never playing in the playoffs.
Right.
But yeah, first base is another position where, we've got you've got three Hall of Famers that played together very recently.
Right. You have to think about it. These are the three guys that are the post Pujols first baseman. Pujols is going to go in a couple.
You add Miguel Cabrera to that too?
Yeah, Cabrera. But Cabrera, I don't. People think of him as much as a third base.
He played more games at first.
Right. I don't know. I never think of him.
Me too. Me too. And it was like he was a great fielding first baseman.
I think of him as a third baseman DH.
So for first base has got has had a lot of stuff. Third base, we talk about it all the time, and maybe in a future podcast we'll kind of put the guys out there because there's some pretty darn good third basemen playing right now.